What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we're going to continue our look at the 2021 NFL offseason. In this video, we'll focus on the four teams of the AFC South. So without further ado, we'll jump right in and we will start by discussing the interesting offseason of the Houston Texans. Now, the Texans quarterback room, we will get to that in a second. But they made a couple moves here. So they only had 2 picks in the first 3 rounds, and they were both third-round picks. They had traded both their first and second-round picks to the Miami Dolphins in separate trades. So, yes, this team probably could have used those picks. Bill O'Brien shot them in the foot by trading those 2 picks away. But with those 2 picks, they would use the first of which, the 67th pick, to select quarterback Davis Mills, and the 89th pick to select wide receiver Nico Collins. This team realizes that they needed a quarterback, and you can never go wrong with adding another receiver. So it's going to be interesting. How long will it be until Davis Mills starts? We will see. Now, they had a busy offseason. They added a lot of players on the offense, the first of which is veteran quarterback Tyrod Taylor. He's going to be the starting quarterback for this team. For how long, it remains to be seen. They also added a pair of running backs in Mark Ingram and Phillip Lindsay. Ingram's a solid player, but he's nearing the end of his career. Lindsay, he should be able to carry this team a little bit. He should be a positive player for this team. They also acquired wide receiver Anthony Miller in a trade, and they signed wide receiver Andre Roberts. Nothing crazy about either of those players. You know, Roberts is a good wide receiver 4. Miller, probably around the same par, maybe a wide receiver 3. And then they did get some offensive line help. They traded for offensive tackle Marcus Cannon, and then they signed a pair of interior linemen in guard Justin McCray and center Justin Britt. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they signed defensive end Jordan Jenkins and defensive tackle Malik Collins. And then they did sign a pair of linebackers as well in Camu Grugier-Hill and Christian Kirksey. And then they did get some new corners as well in Desmond King and Terrence Mitchell. And they re-signed Vernon Hargreaves III. They also acquired punter Cameron Johnston, who, as an Eagles fan, I can tell you, is pretty good. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of these guys seem more like veteran, stopgates for a couple years to help the team at least be okay. Nothing crazy about any of them. Now, you'll notice in the lost, the very first name I have is Deshaun Watson, the quarterback. Deshaun Watson is not officially gone from this team, but he is all but gone. We're not going to get into those allegations today. That's not this video. We're not going to get into the trade rumors today, but he's all but gone. The real question is, where will he be? He's going to be the third-string quarterback for this Houston team. He's going to be a healthy scratch week after week after week. So it's a shame. He was such an electrifying player. He was such a great player for the past couple of years. So hopefully they can figure out something with him. They also lost a pair of veteran quarterbacks in A.J. McCarron and Josh McCown. McCarron, unfortunately, did tear his ACL in Atlanta, and then McCown, he's just older. He's probably done. They also lost running back Duke Johnson and a pair of receivers in Will Fuller V and Randall Cobb, the latter of whom they traded away. Now, these are guys that, a slot receiver and a solid receiver that's very streaky. So they're not going to necessarily miss either of them. Fuller, when he has a big game, though, you will miss him. They also allowed defensive end J.J. Watt to leave. They actually cut him. That was a very surprising move. And basically, there are 2 faces of the franchise. Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt are both basically gone. You probably will never see either of them play as a Texan again. So, lastly, they lost defensive end punter Brian Anger. Not the worst thing in the world. So next we go to the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts, they had 2 picks in the first 3 rounds. The first of which, the 21st overall pick, was used to select defensive end Kwity Paye. The second of which was 54th overall, and they would use that to select defensive end Dayu Odeyingbo. So these 2 guys, they're both kind of higher risk, higher reward type of guys. There's a chance that neither of them pan out. There's a chance that both of them pan out. Only time will tell what happens. Now, they did add some key players as well this offseason. They acquired Carson Wentz in a trade for a couple of draft picks, the quarterback Carson Wentz. They also re-signed running back Marlon Mack. They also re-signed wide receiver T.Y. Hilton. And then they signed former first overall pick, offensive tackle, Eric Fisher. Now, these are guys that, you're getting 2 key players back on your offense. Marlon Mack's probably the running back 2, maybe 3 in Indianapolis. Wentz, of course, is an upgrade over Rivers. Rivers was at the end of his career. And Fisher, he's solid. He's not a superstar. They also signed re-signed cornerback Xavier Rhodes, so the defense is going to be very similar to what it was last year, to an extent. Now, they did lose quarterback Phillip Rivers, who retired after 1 year with the team. Quarterback Jacoby Brissett also left the organization. Tight end Trey Burton left. And offensive tackle Anthony Castonzo retired as well. Bit of a surprising move. He'd been around for about a decade. Now, they also lost defensive end Danico Autry, linebacker Anthony Walker, and safety Malik Hooker. Walker's going to be the most missed of those three. So, next we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Jaguars had a pretty busy offseason to an extent. Now, they had a good amount of draft capital in the first 3 rounds. And, of course, they had the first overall pick after going 1-15 last year. With that pick, they would select quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Yes, Lawrence should be a great player. Extremely excited to see what he can do in the NFL. Now, they did use the 25th pick on running back Travis Etienne. Unfortunately, he is done for the year. They placed him on the season-ending IR. But he definitely looks like he has a possible bright future. Hopefully, he can recover from that injury that he suffered. Then with the 33rd pick, they would go cornerback Tyson Campbell. And then they would select offensive tackle Walker Little at 45 and safety Andre Sisco at 65. So basically, they just saw they needed some help in the line and on the O-line and then the secondary. Can't fault them. And then they did make some moves in free agency. They signed some skilled players to help out Trevor Lawrence in running back Carlos Hyde, wide receiver Jamal Agnew, and wide receiver Marvin Jones. Jones is, of course, the biggest name of those three, so it will be interesting to see how Lawrence can do with them. Now, they also re-signed offensive tackle Cam Robinson, and then on the defensive side of the ball, they signed defensive end Dwayne Smoot, re-signed him, I should say. They also signed defensive tackle Roy Robertson-Harris, cornerback Shaquille Griffin, and safety Rayshawn Jenkins. Of course, the big name of those three is Griffin. He's a pretty good player that they were able to get from Seattle. Now, they did lose a couple of players on the offensive side of the ball. Veteran quarterback Mike Glennon, wide receiver Keelan Cole, and tight end Tyler Eifert, who is still a free agent. It remains to be seen what happens with if they really miss any of these guys. Cole is probably the biggest name of those three. Now, lastly in this division, we have the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, they had an interesting offseason. So they drafted cornerback Caleb Farley with the 22nd pick. Pretty good value. I know I said that in my original video. There are concerns with his injury history, but still can't complain with that value at 22. They drafted offensive tackle Dylan Raduns at 53, linebacker Monty Rice at 92, and cornerback Elijah Molden at 100. Again, these are guys that aren't going to be instant starters, but they should at minimum, help them out in the future. Now, Tennessee also made some good moves in free agency. Specifically when it comes to the skill positions, they did trade for a wide receiver Julio Jones. That was a big move. They gave up a lot to get him, but pairing him with A.J. Brown, with Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback and Derrick Henry, this is going to be a strong offense, no doubt. They also signed wide receiver Josh Reynolds, and they re-signed tight end Anthony Ferkshire. So these are some big names, of course. Reynolds probably wishes he didn't sign here because he signed before Julio Jones was traded there still. Could be worse. Now, they did sign defensive end Danico Autry from their division rivals in Indianapolis. They also signed linebacker Jayon Brown, linebacker Bud Dupree, and cornerback Janoris Jenkins. So, some good veteran players, specifically Dupree, is probably the biggest of those three names. Now, they did lose some players as well. They lost a former first-round pick of theirs in wide receiver Corey Davis, who walked. They also lost wide receiver Adam Humphries. Tight end Jonnu Smith left the team as well. Offensive tackle Dennis Kelly left the team. Now, the big name here, the weird name here, I should say, is offensive tackle Isaiah Wilson. Now, they spent a first-round pick on him in 2020, and then they traded him away after only one season. He's since been cut by the team he was traded to, the Miami Dolphins. So, yeah, not the best pick. Could be worse, I guess, but it really can't be much worse. They also lost defensive end Jadeveon Clowney, defensive tackle Daquan Jones, cornerback Malcolm Butler, who, it's probably not the worst thing that they lost him since he did retire. We'll get to that in tomorrow's video of the NFC West. They also lost cornerback Adoree Jackson, cornerback Desmond King, safety Kenny Vaccaro, and kicker Stephen Gostkowski. These are some key players on the defensive side of the ball. So a lot of games Tennessee's in might be very high scoring. It's going to be interesting to watch them play. So now we're going to look at the standings from last year. And you'll see here that the Titans and Colts both went 11-5 this past season. So Tennessee got the edge due to tiebreakers. And then Houston went 4-12. Jacksonville went 1-15. How do I have the teams doing this year? I have Indianapolis jumping Tennessee to win this division, Jacksonville finishing third, and Houston finishing last. Really, the big surprise is I have Indy over Tennessee. I'm obviously a big believer. I'm a fan of Carson Wentz. You probably know this. You know I'm an Eagles fan. You know I liked Wentz. You know I've praised Wentz in numerous videos, so I'm not going to keep doing it. But this team tied Tennessee last year when they had Phillip Rivers, the shell of Phillip Rivers, as their quarterback. Wentz at least brings some mobility. Yes, there's big injury concerns. I understand that. If he goes down, this team's going to be in trouble. But I think the risk is worth the reward. I think Indianapolis will be a team that makes a run. I don't see them winning more than 13 games, though. I think 13-4 is their absolute ceiling. I think realistically, you might be looking at a 12-5 season. Tennessee's a very good team. I praise their offense, but their defense does scare me a little bit. They're going to be playing in a lot of dogfights. They're going to have a lot of high-scoring games. Jacksonville, I love what Trevor Lawrence offers, but the real question is, can Lawrence actually play at the NFL level, especially as a rookie? Time will tell. The defense still not spectacular. And Houston, thank you for playing. I mean, Houston will have a successful season if they can win 3 games this year. Anyway, this was my AFC South recap video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Later today, we will have the NFC South coming out as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this again. Have a good rest of your day.